Yes, people call back all the time and say, the nurses measured my baby wrong. We're like, well, it was the molding.
So, hi, Tammy. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this meeting with me. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Tammy a little bit real fast. She is the creator and person who runs the Nurse2NNP, so nurse to neonatal nurse practitioner
Correct.
Instagram. Yeah. And she likes to work with new nurses who are neonatal nurses, work with nurses who are wanting to become neonatal nurse practitioners as well, and kind of help counsel them. And she has a lot of great information on her Instagram. So I'll leave that linked below. But what she's going to be chatting with us about today is your first pediatrician appointment. So you've been discharged from the hospital and now it's been a day or two later, and you're going to go see the pediatrician. She's also going to talk a little bit about how to find a pediatrician. So, Tammy, is there anything else that you'd like to add about yourself before we jump into it?
No, I think you've covered it. I've done neonatal nursing for, oh gosh, going on 29 years. So, and I've been a nurse practitioner for 19 years. So, know a little bit about the topic. We'll just jump in.
Awesome. Clearly, you know a lot about the topic. You're not giving yourself nearly enough credit. But if you want to go ahead and get started on just how people can start to find a pediatrician, what are some things that they'll look for? And we'll just kind of have a dialogue and a discussion about that.
Well, first off, I'd like to say generally, I recommend that people start searching for a pediatrician during their pregnancy, at the very least, by the beginning of your third trimester, because you want to have time to research the pediatrician. Also, I recommend that when you've narrowed it down to your group of potential providers, you want to see if, number one, what their location is, because that's going to be something that's important to you. Some moms know they're going back to work. They want the pediatrician practice to be close to their work. Other people want it close to their home.
And you go a
Yeah.
lot in the beginning too. Like you're going to have a
Yes,
lot of appointments in the beginning. If you're having
exactly.
any issues with weight gain or feedings, you're going to be going a lot. And at one point, we were seeing a pediatrician who was over 30 minutes away from our house. And so round trip, that was an hour. And that was one reason why we ended up switching pediatricians with my second, was for the
Right.
location.
So the other thing you want to keep in mind is, do they let you pick a primary healthcare provider? We'll use the term Dr. Brown. Are you going to have the option of always seeing Dr. Brown at that practice? A lot of times that's not the case, especially in larger practices. I always tell parents also, ask about their extended hours, if they have extended hours or for sick visits, as well as weekend and holiday hours. Particularly, I know in my area and some of the more rural areas, they don't have weekend hours. They may or may not have coverage by another pediatrician practice or will refer you to the emergency room. People always ask, well, how do I know these things? Well, during your pregnancy, when you're looking for a pediatrician, ask for a visit. You can come and interview, have a chat. Ask if you can have a televisit. This is going to potentially be the provider for your newborn, and they are not willing to give you a televisit for you to ask questions, introduce yourself, them to introduce themselves. That's something you need to keep in mind. You need to be able to have some type of access. You just don't want to pick a name and a face. You need to see what the vibe is between yourself and that provider. You need to be asking questions such as, what are their beliefs in regards to things that are concerns to you, whether it's vaccinations, cultural beliefs. If you're a vegetarian, are they going to support that lifestyle? Those are things that you really need to know before you start making the final decision on whether this is going to be the provider of your newborn.
Totally. And one thing to kind of keep in mind too is asking about breastfeeding support. So, do they have lactation consultants on staff? Do they have a good relationship with lactation consultants in the community and have references if they don't have some on staff? We have some of the providers who I work with actually have their nurse practitioners are also lactation consultants, international board certified lactation consultants. And so you see them if you're breastfeeding for your first appointment, which can be really beneficial because you're still trying to figure things out in those first few days.
Exactly. Lastly, I'd like to say, make sure that provider fits or is a part of your insurance so that there's not an issue with billing to you, because being a new mom is stressful enough. You don't want the unnecessary financial burdens that could have been avoided.
Totally. And one thing I will add, and this maybe kind of goes into what to expect with your first newborn visit, more than likely, your baby, when you have that first appointment, is not going to be on your insurance yet. And
No,
that's okay. You're going to get a bill that's like $200 for this appointment. You're going to be like, what the what? But chat with them and they'll give you a time frame. Typically, it's about a month after the baby's birth to get the baby on your insurance and then submit the insurance to them. So
exactly.
they know that you don't have insurance yet for the baby, but you'll get baby on insurance and all that will be covered. So if you get that bill, don't freak out because I definitely did
Right.
with my first. And then the other thing that I love on the little thing that you typed up for me about how to pick a pediatrician, where you mentioned to check out the office and see, is it kid friendly? Is everything kind of up to date? Does it seem clean? Does it seem like a place where you'd vibe? I don't know if you wanted to chat a little bit about that.
Yes, I think people just think about their baby just being a little baby, but this baby's only a baby for a short amount of time. And this is going to be a growing baby into a toddler, preschooler, and a school age child. So you need to make sure that not only is it clean, but is it bright? Is it friendly? Is it child friendly? Do they have a sick room, waiting room, and a well waiting room? Because that I know for myself, for my own children, was extremely important.
We did have a question. Somebody was asking the difference between taking your child to a pediatrician versus taking them to a family practice doctor
Right.
where your whole family would go. I didn't know if you wanted to
Right.
speak on that a little bit.
Family practice physicians are just as qualified to take care of well newborns as pediatricians are. This is going to be a personal preference for each family. Not all family practice physicians see newborns. Sometimes they may see children once they reach around 2 years old. Also, some family practice physicians for children with, some complex medical situations may not be quite as comfortable taking care of those children. So the best thing to ask is just to ask what their comfort level is. But if they're comfortable and they've been seeing newborns, pediatric patients, then they're just as capable of taking care of your newborn as a pediatrician is.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all of those tips. I feel like I learned a little bit of stuff there too. I didn't realize that not all family practice doctors took care of newborns. So that's definitely something
No,
important to keep in mind. If we wanted to maybe move on and just talk about a little bit about that first newborn visit. So you've been discharged from the hospital, the pediatrician there, whether it's a pediatrician you're going to see later or as a hospitalist who just works at the hospital, will tell you when to schedule a follow-up appointment with your pediatrician. And that typically tends to be either the next day or the next couple days, just depending on how feeding is going. If you wanted to discuss kind of what it looks like when you go to your first newborn appointment.
first off, when you come into the office, the baby will be weighed. We'll also do their own length and measurements. I also remind parents that head circumference will change. I always like to add that, as well as their length because of the molding of the head. So just know that's just from the baby going through or trying to go through the vaginal canal.
Rosie was shorter when we went to the pediatrician
Yes,
than she was when she
yes.
was initially born. So her head did have
We
just
have
a smidge of molding.
yes, we call people call back all the time and say the nurses measured my baby wrong. We're like, well, it was the molding. So just know that's potential. But then the baby will get an exam. They'll look at that exam compared to what the discharge exam noted, see if there's any differences. So sometimes babies have a few things that needed to be followed up, and we will do that in the office. The pediatrician or nurse practitioner will go over the newborn screening, or it could be that on your prenatal ultrasound, there was something noted, and the pediatrician may order testing to follow that up.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't think people could see because I have it on you, but Rosie woke up from her nap and she's now gonna be the star. And could we circle back around to weight and kind of what people should expect
Right.
with their newborns' weights? Because they're
Exactly.
probably still not back up to their birth weight at that first
No,
appointment, more than likely, right?
no, they will not be. All parents that all babies lose weight the first 7 to 10 days of life. But between day 10 and 14, they should be at or pretty close to back up to that birth weight. That's all normal. In regards to feeding, they're going to want to know how often has baby been feeding, particularly for the breastfeeding mom. Do they feel like baby's latching? Does mom feel like her milk is coming in? Do her breasts feel heavier? If baby is latching, how long are they feeding? Does mom hear baby swallowing? Is baby having wet and poopy diaper? That being said, the bottle fed baby is going to be similar, but in the fact only that we're going to want to know how often is that baby feeding and how many ounces are they taking when they feed. Are they tolerating the feeds? Are they having any spitting? As well as the same, are they having wet and poopy diapers?
But another time when we're really looking at pees and poops and feeds is if we are concerned at all about the jaundice level, about your baby's bilirubin being high, because how they excrete that is by feeding and peeing and pooping. But unfortunately, when it is high, they're super tired, so then they don't want to eat, and it's like this never-ending cycle.
Circle.
Exactly.
So with the jaundice, I always tell parents that there are 4 zones according to the American Academy of Pediatrics. There's low risk, low intermediate, high intermediate, and high risk. We want to keep your baby out of the high risk zone. So in order to do that, it's important that babies feed often. As we get home, it's really important that baby is starting to feed at least every 3 hours, because that's when our weight loss and our jaundice will start piling on to each other. Baby won't eat, so it'll start losing weight and the belly will start creeping up.
So the next thing that they kind of talk to you about, right? We've talked about feeds and we've talked about pees and poops. The other thing that newborns do is sleep, and making sure that you are able to practice that safely, I think, is a really big part of that first newborn appointment.
Right. So big on my list is sleep and safety. They're going to ask, how is baby sleeping? How is mom sleeping? We love babies to be cuddled up against mom. We love them to do skin to skin, and we want them to do it. Babies sleep better. But when you start to feel sleepy, mom, the safest place for your baby to be is in their bed, with no stuffed animals, no blanket, and preferably no other individuals. So on a firm mattress that is safety approved.
Yeah, that's really important. And if you have any questions about, is your sleep location safe? Because I know sometimes that can be really confusing, because things are marketed as if they're for sleep when they're not actually safe for sleep. Like the DockATot is one, swings are another one. You can always ask your pediatrician. They should be very up to date on all of the safe sleeping information, because it's super important to them as well, to make sure that you guys are both sleeping safely.
And one more thing in regards to safety, I know we're talking about sleep, and it's also important that they're both sleeping, that mom is getting rest and baby is getting rest. And the pediatrician is going to want to know, because sleeping patterns affect growth and feeding for newborns. That's important to know, because I think a lot of moms just get so in the cycle of caring for baby, they kind of forget about themselves as well.
Well, and a really big thing that can trigger postpartum depression is sleep or lack thereof. So this is when in our postpartum period, we really need to make sure that we are asking for help, that we're accepting help to get a good chunk of sleep in there. It doesn't always have to be in the middle of the night. In fact, it might not be in the middle of the night, but just to get that good chunk of sleep to help reduce the risk of developing postpartum depression. And then that's another thing that they actually are going to screen you for at the pediatricians, because unfortunately in the United States, we don't see anybody for mental health or for our physical health postpartum unless there's an already known issue until 6 weeks postpartum. So you might at your pediatrician fill out a postpartum depression screen a couple of different times as you're bringing your newborn in, because they're going to be ones who are kind of helping to watch out for you, because by watching out for you, it's also watching out for baby.
Yes, they should be doing at least 3 postpartum screens on mom, minimum. And you can always reach out, whether it's to your OB or your family practice docs, or even the pediatrician, if you start to feel any types of baby blues.
And then you've touched on this a little bit already, that there will be a 2-week follow-up and then a 1-month follow-up. But I guess other questions on what to expect for the next appointment. What would decide when you'd have a next appointment, things of that nature?
A couple of things will decide your appointment. One, going to make your next appointment before you leave the office. And then with that being said, generally they're going to want to see baby back in a week to see where we're going, if we're getting at or close to that birth weight that we talked about. And then they might want to see baby again at 2 weeks of age. So at those visits, there will generally be just a weight and a belly check, as well as assessing feeding and sleeping. By 2 weeks of age, that newborn state screen should be back. And if there are any issues with that, then you will be notified at those visits. If not prior, they will call you at home to get another sample for that test. Probably tell you at your 2-week visit about the first sets of immunizations. Each visit, they will also tell you what to expect developmentally, where your baby should be. And I always tell people, take that with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean as soon as your baby turns X month, like, oh my gosh, my kid's not rolling over, not sitting up, that there's something wrong. That's just giving you a little window of where they should be. There are no hard, fast rules because some kids just progress a little bit slower than others.
Okay, I think we covered everything. Is there anything else that you want to add about, picking your pediatrician or newborn visits?
Only other thing I might add is in regards to car seat safety, that you need to definitely make sure you're following the state and federal guidelines for car seat safety. And for those little ones who were less than 5 pounds, just be aware, not all car seats are for babies under 5 pounds.
That's a really, really great point. Yeah. And if you need help installing your car seat, you want to go to somebody who is certified. Some fire departments have people who are
Yes.
certified to help you install the car seat.
So
Yep.
the hospitals will not legally put your baby. So you really need to know and be able to have already practiced it, because they will not help you install the car seat.
Yeah, it's a liability. Tammi, thank you so much for your time. I really
Well,
appreciate
thanks
this.
for having me.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really helpful because there is a lot of mystery or a lot of preparation surrounding the giving birth part, but not as much on like the newborn stage or the postpartum stage, because you really get your
Right.
mind wrapped around in the labor part, and it's important, but everything else is important too. And with a pediatrician, that's somebody who you will potentially be seeing for 18 years. So you want to
Yeah.
figure out exactly what you are looking for and what to expect when you go to visit
Yeah.
your pediatrician. Okay, well, guys, don't forget to go follow Tammi at Nurse2NNP, and it's the number 2, and I'll leave it linked below and probably up on the screen as well. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope that you have enjoyed our little video stealer who went right back to sleep as soon as she was in my arms, but we'll take it, right? And thank you again, Tammi, for doing this video with me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.